Hello, Christian.
How's it going, Ashley?
How are you, my friend? It's good to see you.
Yeah, you too. And it's nice to meet you. Last time we did it with Aaron, and it was really fun. And I'm glad that now we have a female presenter. Let's go.
Yeah, we are. So welcome to the audience as well. If you all would not mind just typing into the comments, let us know that you can see us and hear us. Want to make sure that you're getting the best experience possible. And yes, just like you mentioned, Christian, my name is Ashley, and I am a new producer host on the Discover team. We are expanding, trying to provide more opportunities for our creators to connect with their audiences and offer this amazing content that you all are building and sharing. And today is incredibly exciting because we're getting like a peek behind the curtain here of how to launch a startup if you are, like me, a non-technical co-founder or founder, as it were. And I'm so excited to have you with us today. This is very much in Christian's wheelhouse, everyone. You are learning today from a serial entrepreneur, somebody who is well practiced in not just launching things himself, but also working to educate, inform, and help others do the same. So you have helped startups, presumably those with non-technical co-founders, launch their startups, get into accelerators, make millions of dollars in funding. And today you're going to share a little bit of that with us, which we're so excited to have you. So thanks for being here.
Absolutely. I really appreciate it, Ashley. And I welcome to the team as well. Super excited to put
Thank
on
you,
some of these
thank you.
webinars with you as well as the presenter. And yeah, I mean, it's a very exciting thing. I wish I could just say, it's a very nice introduction, but the reality is that, there's a lot of misinformation out there at the moment in terms of building startups. There's a lot of headlines, a lot of narratives that we all buy into. And those are really detrimental to kind of this entrepreneurship movement in kind of a time where everyone's kind of trying to find ways to either leave the corporate world or be a bit more self-reliant or, start a side project so I think it's just a really important time for people to get the right sort of information. So yeah, I'm super stoked to do this.
And we're gonna set as our goal to put out some of that high quality information from somebody who has deep experience in the space and in the field. While you are, so to our audience, again, welcome. Let us know. I see we've got some folks from Tampa, Florida. Let us know where you're tuning in from. We often have really, really global audiences for these events and are excited to learn more about you, audience. And maybe also let us know where you are in your startup journey. What compelled you or inspired you to join us here today? Are you a non-technical founder? Do you have an idea that you're hoping to turn into a startup? Where are you in the process? Is this something that you're trying and you want to, like Christian said, kind of sift through some of the copious amounts of information that is out there about how to launch a startup and really drill down? So let us know in the comments where you are on your path. And just before I turn it over to you, Christian, to let everybody know, there will be a replay available for this entire session. So don't fret if you miss some of the pearls of wisdom that we'll be getting from Christian today. You'll have access to a replay both via email, we'll send it to you, and then also on the YouTube channel. As we go through today, keep your questions coming in the comments. I'll be here monitoring, checking out what we, what comes up for you as we go through today's content. And we'll make sure to we'll carve out some time for Q&A at the end. Also, the link to the full course that Christian is offering through Teachable is pinned to the top of the YouTube page that you're on right now. So definitely check that out because there is a very sweet deal for people who are tuned into today's event, which we're excited to learn more about from Christian. So without any further ado, I will turn it over to you, Christian. We can dive into this content today. I know you have a lot to share.
Yeah, and of course, if you have questions, please put them in the chat. We'll be answering the questions at the end. So yeah, I'm super excited about this as well. We've put this on for so many communities. We put this on for so many of the major universities, USC, UCLA. We've put it on for Princeton. And every time that we put it on, people are like, "Oh wow, I had no idea that this even existed." So for us, after this, hopefully you'll get information that you can also help spread this movement, which is, essentially about helping people build side projects, businesses, startups, whatever you want to call them. Right now is probably the best time ever. It's never been a better time to build a startup as a non-technical founder. And we're seeing a huge rise of companies, solo founders or just duos building, companies that are quite large. Some freelance people around them, but it's just super exciting. So we'll jump into some of this stuff, and I'll really take it from the ground up. I won't assume that people know very much about the startup world, and hopefully you'll get something from this. We'll try to keep it entertaining too.
All right, let's do it. Let me pull up your deck here.
Awesome. So this is the point at which I need to put it in full screen.
Ta-da! So, we are NoCode. There you
go. Awesome. So let's do this. So today the presentation is how to build a startup as a non-technical founder. And I'm going to introduce myself a little bit before that. So my name's Christian Peverelli. I was born in Switzerland, but grew up all over the place. Brazil, France, Cyprus, Greece, Venezuela. I founded 3 companies, raised capital for 2 of those, had 1 exit. And more importantly, I was also for a 3-year period the director of a startup accelerator called Startup Boost, in which I trained more than 100 startups who went on to raise more than $40 million in funding, and also got into some of the top investing accelerators like Y Combinator, Techstars, 500 Startups, etc. So essentially, we'd select 8 teams out of about 400 applicants. And it would all culminate through a program that was a 6-week program. And at the end of that 6-week program, we would present the teams in front of about 150 investors at Google here in Venice. So not in Silicon Valley, in Venice. So that's Los Angeles. And it was an awesome experience. But my path definitely took a really big pivot when I met my partner, Eddie. He's also the co-founder of We Are NoCode. So he's half German, half Russian, speaks 3 languages. I met him, and at the time he was head of product innovation for one of the largest independent agencies in the US. So what he was doing was essentially prototyping, building prototypes, building products for some of these massive brands. And the thing that really shook me the most was the fact that, he was doing this, and on average, he was spending between $100 and $1,000. He built a little, let's call it a startup that was Sizely, completely alone. He built it in 90 days for less than $1,000, and it is currently at $12,000 in monthly recurring revenue. And that was the point at which I realized, wow, this is not only a person who's not technical. So Eddie does not know how to code. He's non-technical. He also, did not have a bunch of money to spend towards this. And so this was a really revolutionary to me at the time. So this was about 7 years ago when NoCode was nothing what it is today. And we'll get into NoCode in a little bit. So obviously, immediately I brought in Eddie to the accelerator, and we realized there was just, we had to democratize these methodologies and these tools. And really the biggest gap that started happening was not necessarily in the availability of these tools, but connecting humans with these tools. And that's the point at which we realized, well, we need to democratize this information. We can't just bring it to 8 teams every 6 months. So we built We Are NoCode with the goal to empower non-technical founders and digital creators. So it could be creating a side hustle. It could be someone who's looking to build a business. We also have plenty of business owners looking to sort of create things within their business and be more effective. And so now we have more than 350, so this is incorrect, startups from around the world, which has just been a real blessing. And we have partnerships with some awesome schools, great accelerators, and also nonprofits. So we've participated in helping underserved communities as well. Essentially, when we talk about non-technical people, we kind of find ourselves at this weird crossroads, right? And we have all these options. These are the options. If you want to build a tech startup or a startup that requires software, which is pretty much every single business these days. There's a great quote from Mark Andreessen, who's one of the largest investors in Silicon Valley, that says that software is eating the world. So essentially, most startups or most opportunities at the moment require some kind of digital presence, whether it be a platform or distribution, sales, etc. So these are the options, and they're all not that great. Looking for a tech co-founder. So this is something, and I wish I could say I had never made any of these mistakes, but 15 years ago when I started building businesses, it was a very different scene, and all these no-code tools didn't exist. Now, finding a non-technical founder usually ends up just being like going to a bunch of meetings, trying to meet someone, and kind of trying to go to bar to marry a person. Like, it's possible, but it's very unlikely you're going to meet someone who's like in it for the next 10 years, who you're going to love working with personally, who has the exact skill set that you need, who's willing to leave their high-paying job. And so it ends up being a big waste of time. Learning how to code is kind of the second option. We all know that to become a good programmer, it takes between 2 and 6 years, and many people don't really have that time. So oftentimes people want to hire developers, and this process is very expensive. Usually when we talk about MVPs or first products, we're talking about looking at quotes between 25, 50K. I've seen people spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on first products as well. And so it's not very effective. Not everyone has that much side savings to be able to put into their startup right off the bat. And hiring offshore can be cheap, but it usually ends up in what we call spaghetti code, which is very badly coded sort of programming. And it ends up being unusable, very buggy, and then usually ends up just being a waste of money. So all those options are not great. And now this is why I'm so excited to be able to talk to you about this movement called NoCode. So I'll take it from the beginning. For those of you who have no idea what I'm talking about, that's fine. We're going to really break it down step by step. So let's start off with a definition of what NoCode actually is. So NoCode is the art of creating a unique solution to a problem that could have been written with code, but an individual chose to build using more visual methods, so without coding. So when we talk about NoCode, it's actually a movement that started with a bunch of tools coming out. If we look at the evolution of programming, this is how it kind of goes. So a long time ago, we had computers probably the size of your house, and we would insert punch cards because computers, what do they understand? Ones and zeros, kind of like Keanu Reeves in The Matrix, I guess. But essentially, so after a while, we realized, okay, maybe we don't want to, fill all our closets up with these zeros, and we built, and of course, processing power of computers got better. That's when we created programming languages. And as you know, there are so many programming languages out there. Essentially, a language that allows us to communicate with computers without necessarily having to talk in ones and zeros. We create a language on top of the ones and zeros. And so when we talk about NoCode, we're literally just talking about, and by the way, it's called visual programming as well. They are these tools that are essentially visual interface that allow you to build software, simple or complex software, essentially dragging and dropping functionalities, writing the logic in plain English. And so a lot of people kind of compare it to building the design in PowerPoint and then the functionalities or the logic with Excel. And so as you can imagine, it is really opening up a huge number of doors and is going to completely change the way that we build products moving forward. Now, this does not mean that programming is going away. Behind all of these visual programming tools, there are coders. There is coding language. We're just not having to interface with that code to be able to build software, which really changes the game. So when we look at the evolution, you can think of things like in the 2000s, we had WordPress, which was more like low code. So low code is a term that's used when you use a little bit of code and mostly no code. Drupal. Over time, we went to more really zero code. So that here we're talking about sort of Shopify, Wix, Squarespace. You can essentially build basic things, right? You could build landing pages, websites, and e-commerce stores, but it didn't go much further than that. And now, as of sort of 2020 was the exploding year of no code, there are this explosion of new tools that allow you to do much more sort of in-depth builds, and again, require zero code. And so this is a movement that's super, super exciting, because it's going to change not only the way that product development is, but also entrepreneurship forever. And it currently is. So we'll bring you through some case studies later on. Let's talk about how this actually works. So essentially, you are designing, again, instead of designing like this, which is all text-based, we are designing with a visual interface, which is, so this is inside one no-code tool. There are plenty of different graphic user interfaces or visual interfaces that you can use to build. And then there's sort of the creation of logic, which used to be like this with HTML and all that. And at the moment, it looks a lot more like this. So plain English. You're really telling, request a ride, and then that will, automatically create a new ride in the app, et cetera, et cetera. So it allows us to not have to understand all this technical mumbo jumbo and be able to build powerful things. So let's talk about the benefits. This is actually something that was put together by Forward Partners. It's a venture capital firm or investors in London. And they kind of call no code the new model, whereas the old model would be just traditionally building companies with code. So when we talk about the time investment to build the first product or MVP, we went from 1 year or more to 6 weeks. When we talk about the costs, so it used to be like $50,000, so anywhere between 30 and 100. And now we're talking about less than $1,000. The team goes from having multiple people, so you need a front-end developer, a middleware developer, a back-end developer, a designer, a UI UX person, a lot of different people to build an actual solution, to now being able to do it with one person, where one person is taking all of these roles, essentially. So the capabilities from technical people, you absolutely needed them, to non-technical. And so this is a great quote from Jason Calacanis, who says that startups being able to get to year 2 with $250,000 in revenue without ever having to hire a developer is the greatest unlock I can think of right now for our economy and entrepreneurship. So Jason Calacanis is a notorious Silicon Valley investor. He also runs This Week in Startups and Angels. He has an investment syndicate. I mean, the list goes on pretty much. But I wanted to now jump into a couple of real-world examples so you can see kind of what we're talking about, what has been built leveraging these platforms. So the first one is ClearSegment. So this is a platform that we actually built, because what we do at We Are No Code is we essentially teach people how to build startups leveraging no-code technology. So we built ClearSegment not to launch it as a startup, but literally to break down in our tutorials how we built it. So this is a SaaS platform, software as a service platform. We built it in 10 days. It cost us in total $40, and is going to cost us about $350 to maintain for the next 6 months. It was built with no-code, with a combination of no-code tools. So you can either build with a combination of different tools. Sometimes you're going to build with an all-in-one builder. So everything happens within one builder. It really just depends on what you're building. Here, we built this with Webflow, Airtable, MemberStack, and Zapier. So it is a subscription membership platform, and we charge people on a monthly basis to get access to targeted segments to market towards. Then we have another platform that we built, which is a low-code platform, actually. It's called Proofreader.ai. So here, this is about essentially being able to proofread visual content. So think of it like if you took a picture of a sign and there was a typo, you could upload that image to the platform, and you would see where the typo is from an image. Or you could upload a deck you're about to send to a client, and if there were any spelling mistakes in that deck, it's way more effective than actually getting your proofreading team to take care of that, or in the case of a startup, yourself, right? So here, the building cost was $500. We built it in 21 days. Again, we leveraged Webflow as the front end. And then we tapped into external APIs. So we tapped into the technology that Google has for visual recognition. So that's how we do the visual recognition. And then also the language tool API, which is essentially does the the proofreading So we didn't have to develop those. We were able to leverage third-party technology to integrate these powerful features within our solution. Then we have Sizely. So this was the platform I mentioned earlier, built in for $1,000, 90 days, 35,000 users currently, and it's at $12,000 in monthly recurring revenue. So let's talk about sort of what kind of things can you build and how do you actually build with no-code. So essentially, building simple or complex solutions looks a little bit like this. You will build most of it with no-code, like 100% no-code. So think of it like you're building the login, the sign up, you're connecting payments, you have a database, a user management system, you have user flows, you have logic, you have notifications, all of that you're building 100% yourself. And in many cases, these are full businesses, like nothing else is needed. But as I showed you in this other example, you can also tap into external services. So you could essentially build an AI model separately and bring it in. You could tap into AI models that already exist out there. So there are loads of ways in which you can actually do that. And you can essentially connect your app, as I mentioned, to your app, your platform, your website, whatever it is, to external AI models. You could also do data sources, like you could bring in weather information or stock market prices. And of course, any type of service on Amazon or Google, think of storage, think of the APIs that I just talked about now, the technology of like proofreading or the technology. And all of this is able to be built with no code. So connected with these connections can all be built with no code as well.
Christian,
yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. I'm just this is incredible. I'm really curious to know what from our audience, which of these capabilities is piquing your interest? Like, what are the things that you are hungriest for? I know I like what you said, Christian, about the proofreading, your proofreading team being able to, which is right, like you in between all the other things that you're trying to do. So curious to know from our audience, which of these integrations, capabilities are the things that you are most curious about? And would love to, I'm sure you'll get into this a bit, but Anthony's asking, well, how do you connect an API without code? So I already piquing curiosity for folks.
Yeah, well, you can build the API connection, as I mentioned right here, with no-code tools. So that's super exciting. And every day, basically, we're seeing more and more cutting-edge tools that allow you to do even more complex stuff. So it's a really exciting movement, and it's also growing as the community builds more and more awesome things. So awesome. Let's keep going. Bring you through a couple case studies. This is Danny. She actually built Scribbly. So she actually was not happy at her job, quit with no plan B, which I do not recommend, by the way. And she built Scribbly in 8 weeks with no-code tools. And in 12 months, she was able to scale that up to $20,000 in monthly recurring revenue using the tools that you can see below. So great story. You also have Nadeem, who essentially leveraged no-code solutions. So he's non-technical. He scaled from only $100,000 in revenue to $5 million leveraging no-code tools. Here, one thing we like to highlight is that he took no investment, no investors, no funding. And in many cases, people who leverage these tools don't necessarily need to. We also have Alessandro, who built Rizzo. So this is literally just to be good. So he created Rizzo, free education resources, and he was able to build out this platform really quickly, resources for low-income communities. So there's a lot that can be done. And through COVID, actually, we saw so many awesome apps and platforms being built because we needed to respond quickly to the pandemic. And so there were just like no-code was essentially the best way to do that. So let's talk about what kind of things you can build with no-code. So we talk about apps like Lyft, Uber, Tinder, WhatsApp, Instacart, so messaging apps. So here we're talking about features like geolocation, messaging, real-time tracking, etc. We also talk about marketplaces. So marketplaces, here we're talking about essentially a buyer, a seller, and the platform is in the middle and wants to take a fee. So here Airbnb is a great example of that. Upwork, Amazon, Indiegogo, Fiverr. Here, the features are like profiles. We need to be able to create listings, split the payments, and many more functionalities. So these, are classic, great examples of things that you can build with no code. And many of these platforms have been replicated in no code, by the way. Then we have products like social networks, YouTube, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest. Again, messaging, notifications, sharing content, whether it's video or imagery, all possible with no code. And, I just kind of bundled a bunch more here because, if you think of things like Netflix, like subscription content, Salesforce CRMs, sales CRMs like Pipedrive or Slack even has been replicated with no code. Eventbrite, even Zoom, so video calls, streaming, automation. It's really, the capabilities are really endless. If you'd like to check out a couple of examples, you can check out wearenocode.com/showcase. And one of the questions that we get often is, how long does it take to actually build an app? So whether it be a web app or a mobile app. So essentially, this is the way we like talking about it. If you're building something simple and you're a beginner, so here we're going to assume you're kind of a beginner. It will take a couple of weeks to be able to build solutions that are relatively simple. And then when we talk about more complex solutions, we're talking about a couple of months. And of course, different tools will have different learning curves. And also, one thing that's important, we might talk about this a little bit later, but essentially, people go about the process of building startups wrong. And that's one of the biggest mistakes that people make. It's kind of like they have this idea, then they're like, I just need to build it now. I need to find a developer. And that's really a bad approach to take. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. So can you build your app with no code? The answer to that question that we get all the time is most likely yes. There are a couple limitations to no code that we'll talk about probably in the Q&A. However, whether or not it's possible to build it is not really the point. And that's the big however. Building your app or your product is simply not enough. And a shocking figure that came out was that 90% of all apps in the App Store, the iOS store or Apple App Store, were essentially zombie apps. So had not been used in the past 30 days. So it shows that essentially most people are building products that no one uses. That's the much bigger problem that's happening in startup land. A study done by CB Insights found that the number one reason why people failed their startups were essentially no real market need. So that was 42% of the cases. And the way that they usually approach this is by essentially, with the path that I just mentioned earlier, it's this idea of, I have an idea, I need to build it. And then when it's built, I just expect people to flock towards this app. And so they use this strategy, which is essentially build it and they will come. This is Steve Blank. He essentially says he's the godfather of startups. He talks about, build and they will come is not a strategy. It is a prayer.
So can I ask a clarifying question on that, Christian?
Yeah.
And I don't want to take up too much time, but
of course,
is the implication there that with all of these zombie apps and like how many things that have been built but are not used, that is sort of evidence of what you're suggesting, which is that the approach to building the thing and then trying to get users is backwards, right? And we end up with all of these wasted resources and that kind of thing, like these 90% zombie apps. So why not think about, like, flip our thinking on that, and before we go through the building process, like, do the
I love it. Maybe you
first.
can just keep going. Why don't you read this sentence out too? Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Okay, a product is not a startup. Yeah.
Yeah, and for me, having built several startups, I'm not going to lie. When I started off, I was doing it logically, but the reality is that building startups is very counterintuitive unless you want to just spend a bunch of money early on. So yeah, I think that's like probably the biggest problem is the way people are approaching building startups. And what it's leaving behind is essentially people spending all their savings and 2 years of their life, then failing a startup and thinking, you know what, startups, my ambitions, this is not for me. And it is killing entrepreneurship. And I could talk about that. That's a whole other presentation where we talk about the current industry and how it's at. I'm very good friends with, like all the VC investors, and also the angel investors, accelerator programs, and all that. And I don't have anything against it. It's just there are different paths, and even some of those are starting to realize that, hey, there are better ways to do this. And that's just that's just innovation.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Okay. Well, we've got Chang and Anthony. I see your questions coming through. These are really good. We'll save those for Q&A. But awesome. I want to let you get back to your presentation here, Christian. So go ahead.
Yeah. So as we were saying, and as you noted, essentially building a product is just not building a startup. And that's the main reason why people fail. There are all these other things, right? Like, first of all, very basic, like what do customers actually want? Like, what is the best business model to be able to monetize that audience? Are you monetizing the customers? Are you finding another way to make money from them? What should your pricing be? What are the sales strategies that you're going to do? How do you even do marketing? How about partnerships? And these are just 6 of like maybe 30 things that founders really just need to understand and learn a little bit of to increase dramatically their chances of succeeding. So now I'm actually going to bring you through the actual step-by-step method that we teach founders how to build startups as a non-technical founder. So leveraging no-code technology. What we really did at We Are No Code was combining these very powerful and proven methodologies with teaching these hard skills of no-code tools. So let's jump right into it. This is essentially a bird's eye view of the process itself. So at first, you want to set the hypothesis. So behind your startup, there are all these hypotheses. And to de-risk the riskiness of your startup early on, we essentially want to prove these right or wrong and then move on. So if we think of Airbnb, for example, one of their big hypotheses is people are willing to rent their second home or their main home to strangers, right? That's a hypothesis. If that was proven right, then they would be able to move forward with the way that they were thinking of doing things. If not, they would have had to dramatically change their approach. So this is essentially one of the key hypotheses that Airbnb had. As we all know, they proved it right. And so that's why Airbnb is the way it is. But essentially, if that was wrong, we would see a very different version, or Airbnb would exist as a totally different company. It wouldn't even be built by the same people. So the first step is really about de-risking by setting those hypotheses, first of all, like identifying which are the highest risk hypotheses in my startup. Then once we kind of have an understanding of what our idea of the business is, let's get a little reality check. So that's when we do customer discovery and development. Here, what's important to know about this process is that it's all about finding out, okay, well, I have a great idea, but unless I'm the only customer, I need to find out what the customers, the people who I think are going to want to buy this thing, what they actually think without talking about the product or the solution at all. As soon as you start talking about this, people start giving you positive feedback, because as humans, we want to be nice, and that is useless for you as a startup founder. So customer discovery essentially allows you to get insight from the market itself, understanding if you're targeting the right specific subsegment. So you want to choose a very small segment at first, and over time, you'll be able to service more people. But early on, you need to find the best customer to target. And in these through this interview process, you're actually building a bond. Some of these people will actually be your first paying customers further down the line, but you're not pitching at all. So 0 pitching. And it's kind of just a reality check. The difference between what people say that they want and what I thought I wanted to deliver as a solution. And usually you're going to have to adapt a little bit once you hit the market realities. That being said, as we all know, we are humans, right? And so there's a large difference between what we say and what we actually do. And that's where we essentially now want to go ahead and build a market test. We want to see, are people who say that they want this, or say that these are the things that interest them, are they willing to take an action that shows us that they are willing to spend money or that they want to buy? So here what we're going to do is to build a market test, also a product solution fit test, a smoke test. There's lots of ways to call this. This can be built with no code in just a couple of weeks, launched in the market. We also want to, at this point, what we're going to want to do is actually attach analytics and tracking to understand how people are actually using this first tool, and how and essentially it's going to fine tune our product strategy moving forward. We're going to go to market acting like we've built out this entire thing. So part of the smoke test is kind of like smoke and mirrors. You act like you've built the entire solution, and you gauge whether people are willing to buy it. And guess what? If they're not willing to buy it when you don't have it yet, but it seems like you have it, they're not going to want to buy it when you build it. So this is really a great way to be able to de-risk dramatically and start building a customer base as we're building out features of a product that people actually want. So once we get all of that insight and we have a list of people who want to buy, we're going to actually build a very limited product called an MVP, minimum viable product, to be able to deliver to those people. And it's going to solve their problem. And so they at this point have already paid for it. So the idea is that the only thing that we have to do is to fulfill and iterate. When we talk about building MVPs, you want to take an approach where essentially every product solves the problem. But every time you build the next version of the product, it is more effective at doing so. So let's take the example of building a solution to the transportation problem, right? You want to go to get to work quicker, right? The first iteration might be a skateboard, right? A skateboard is going to be quicker than walking. The next iteration might be a bicycle. The iteration after that will be, let's say, a scooter, then maybe a motorcycle, then maybe a car, then maybe, if you're rich, maybe a helicopter. But every iteration solves the problem. It just gets better and better at doing that. If you go straight into building the end product that you want to build, guess what? You're building a car straight away. What does that mean? You start building the wheels. Great. What can you do with 2 wheels? Nothing. Then you build sort of the carcass of the car, or let's say I'm terrible at knowing how to actually build cars, but let's say you build sort of the internal structure. Okay, what can you do with that? Nothing. How about when you add the carcass? Still nothing. How about when so none of the iterations until you spent all that time and money solves the problem and has a solution people are willing to pay for. And so that's absolutely the wrong approach that we want to take. But so this is the reason why we actually built this program, and it's called the NoCode Startup. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about it right now. Essentially what it is that it's an action-based program for early stage, non-technical founders to build, launch, and monetize their startup without writing a single line of code. So a good way to kind of think about it, and notice we say action-based. We teach people through taking action how to learn how to build startups. There is plenty of theory out there. And frankly, the one thing I've learned in the 15 years building companies is that we learn by taking actions as humans, by making mistakes, by fixing those, and by learning hard skills. So we focused on that instead of what we see at a lot of sort of boot camps that kind of teach the theory of startup entrepreneurship, or how to build a deck, or how to fundraise, or all these things that are not useless, but they're actually not useful until you have a revenue generating company. So essentially the NoCode Startup is the mix between a startup accelerator, so all the knowledge that we had in building startups, in running an accelerator program, and also in product school, so building products, web apps, websites without coding. And so our main vision and mission is to empower non-technical founders, and our goal for them is to help them build their app without being technical, help them acquire users and turn those into paying customers, save a huge amount of time and money along the journey. And so this is actually a really interesting point that I could go a little bit deeper on. Oh, I see that your volume is on, so I'm guessing that something is, there is a question here.
No, I actually was just going to say, I wish I had this when I first moved out to San Francisco as, a liberal arts person with a nonprofit background, and how, working on this. Okay, totally did the.
I love that.
The data, it is worse than dating in so many ways. Looking the search for a technical co-founder and being able to do this kind of, yeah. I'm just like, oh man, just one of those things.
I love what you're saying, because me and Eddie always say this. Like, we built the program we wished we had when we started off building companies.
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
had we taken, and one thing that I underestimated was like trying, like, why would you try to spend all that time and money figuring it out on your own if there are just proven ways to do it and people who are more experienced? So that's, it's interesting to see that the biggest expense in entrepreneurship is actually the time, right? Your rent, your car,
Yeah.
your,
Yeah.
so it's like the difference between taking 2 months and doing things and taking 6 months is dramatic, and usually we see startups pumping out first products in 12 to 18 months. So this is, we essentially packaged everything that we wished we had in a program that was action-based. And, so let's talk about the package, right? The program package. Like, what do you get when you actually join the program, and how can we deliver that kind of value to people? So the first one is in Teachable. So essentially, we have the step-by-step curriculum. So this is the section of our program. So we don't call ourselves a course. We're actually a program or a no-code accelerator, because what you're going to receive in Teachable is literally just our core curriculum. So you get access to over 120 different videos that break down the steps, step-by-step, action-based, with sort of templates and blueprints so that you can accelerate your path and take action quickly. The great thing is you can learn at your own pace, so it's very well adapted to people who full-time entrepreneurs who are just like go, 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 and also part-time entrepreneurs. You can start at any level, which is really cool. So we have people who join and they essentially are looking to, they've done everything. They have like 300 people waiting for a product, and now they just need to build it. So great, we'll take it from there. And then we also have people who have like 5 ideas or have no ideas, and either need to figure out which one of these 5 do I need to do, or how can I find a good idea? It's well adapted for those 3, scenarios. And the reason for that is because we wanted to make this, very democratized. And also what I'll talk about in a second is how we were able to essentially cater with hands-on support alongside this. So again, no fluff, action-based. It's really, so modules that are sort of sales, business model, pricing, marketing, and again, blueprints, workbooks, and very action-oriented. We're not trying to become Netflix. We're not going to deliver you, 150 hours of content for you to sit back on a couch and eat chips. We're going to teach you the things that you need to know, and more importantly, we're going to show you how to take action with like real skills, like hard skills, stuff they're not teaching at school. And then we combine that with the product school, where we really break down step by step, several different platforms, including Webflow, Bubble, Airtable, MemberStack, Zapier, JetBoost, and really click-by-click tutorials showing you how to learn these tools quicker than you could learn them through the tools themselves. So this has been incredibly effective. But of course, everyone has their own questions. And since we have this awesome community, we do live weekly coaching and mentorship. So this is directly with myself and Eddie. It's essentially ask us anything. We have about 20 to 30 builders in each session. And we are just essentially giving personalized feedback, making sure that people are on track, making sure they're building the right thing at the right time, that if they're making decisions that are money decisions, that it's the right phase, and essentially break them through the roadblocks, keep them on track every step of the way.
And just to clarify for our audience, I'm putting that this is, what Christian is talking about here is like part of this package deal. So I like what you said about the difference between a course where you're just kind of passively receiving information or content, and then this action-oriented framework, which is part of the program that you are offering through Teachable. So I put that link for the audience. Just the link is in the pin to the YouTube channel, and then also in the chat here. So you can check out more of what Christian's talking about, which is like really exciting.
Yeah, you basically get access to a massive membership area where we have just so many different things. I'm going over them now, so I might repeat myself. I'll just keep going with these different things. But thanks for talking about that. We're much more of a university program than just an online course. So essentially, all of these sessions are also recorded. So when we give you feedback, when we help you out, you don't have to memorize or take a bunch of notes. You can go and check it out. We also have noticed that our community just loves watching these because they actually can learn from other people's questions as well. So It's some people actually watch a bunch of these different things. We usually go for an hour. That's the official number, but we always go for 2 hours because we just don't leave until there are no more questions. Then we have private video support. So now this is really powerful. Since we do the coaching sessions once a week, we essentially, each one of the founders, when they join, they get a private channel on Slack where we provide video support. So you essentially send us a video of your question, or you write out a question. In the case of technical things, it's always going to be best that you do it via video, so you show us what's going on. You're also sharing your link to your project. So when you share that with us, we can go into your project and show you click by click how to change the errors that are occurring within your app or platform. And in that way, and it doesn't save, unfortunately, because the whole point is that you can then go in, take that video, repeat the clicks that we showed you, and that's the point at which you're really learning. When you face those issues, you reach out to us via private video Slack, and in that Slack, there's myself, there's Eddie, and there are a couple more members of the We Are NoCode team to support you as well. On top of that, our aim is to really reduce how much you're spending as you go along the process. We have $300,000 worth of perks. So pretty much every no-code tool that we teach, we have a massive discount or a free, well, actually we have free sections, free like 3 to 6 months of for free because we have partnerships with over 175 different service providers. So this is a way to just save thousands of dollars along the way, but also to kind of like build not only the core product, but all these other tools you might use around it as well. So it's just a massive list. I won't go into all the different discounts right now, but yeah, we constantly also grow out that list. So we get contacted all day long by every new no-code platform who wants to be listed in our discounts area. So it's great. It's growing. We also have, as you can imagine, being part of a global founder Slack community. So we have people in more than 23 different countries. We interact with them in all these different channels. So we have a channel for every single topic. We have a channel for each no-code tool. And of course, each person has their own private channels. So here the idea is that you can connect with all these other founders. Like, we're all in the same boat. Even us building We Are NoCode, like we are releasing right now, we just released our new membership area actually at the beginning of this week. And, so that's what's great about it. Like, we are actually building our own company and teaching all these other founders and supporting them as they're doing it themselves. But it's just, for those of you who have never built a company, it's difficult to get support from the outside world because people who love you the most and who you love the most simply don't go first-handedly through the struggles that you go through. So being surrounded by a group of other people is just so important. So now let's jump into the next part, which is we got so many awesome interactions within the Slack that we started putting on these speed networking events. It's essentially like chat roulette with startup founders. And so this has just been super fun. We get together and we're just, it's like these 3 to 5 minutes. It depends on how we change the settings. And we're just interacting, meeting new people. It's a great way to be able to not only find co-founders if you're looking for them, share ideas, a skill exchange. So we have doctors, we have lawyers, we have MBA students, PhDs, we have people who, construction people, like in construction management, we have people in the finance industry, we have people who are still students, we have people who are full-time 9-to-5 employees. We have an awesome community of people who are all coming with the same intention, and really do not underestimate how important it is to have a tight-knit community when you're going through essentially the hardship that is building a startup. Because anyone who tells you that there's an easy way to make money or to build a startup, make money online, all that stuff is literally just probably trying to take you for a nice ride. So don't believe the hype. So overall, we provide everything that you need to be a successful founder. So the know-how, the step-by-step curriculum, the hands-on coaching, the networking sessions to be close with other people in the community, this massive perks package, and of course, the video support. And through that, we're able to bring people from a process that kind of looks like this, traditional path, and essentially $50,000 in 1 year, according to Forward Partners, and bring it down to something that looks a little bit better. a little bit more like this. There is no straight line in entrepreneurship. Sorry to tell you, it's going to take hard work, and a process that essentially breaks it down into a couple of months and $1,000. And our real goal for people is to be able to essentially quickly launch their startups, bring them to the market, adapt them, like focus on monetization as quickly as possible, not delay it for the end, not depend on getting hundreds of thousands of users before you start thinking about monetization. That model does not work anymore, unfortunately, unless you are TikTok or Instagram, or you would literally need to have such explosive growth to be able to have no business model that in many cases, that's more like building a startup in 2010. And so, yeah, we have a program tuition with an application process. So $1,997 is our program because we wanted to have the price be equal or less than 1 credit at a major university. And of course, this would not be as awesome and if we didn't have this great sort of offer for you today through Teachable Discover. So thank you, Teachable, for putting on this discount. So you will get 25% off the entire program. So that includes the accelerator modules, the no-code modules, the curriculum, all the discounts, the coaching, the community, the video support, the speed networking events, et cetera, et cetera. And that's for a one-time payment of $1,497. So that's in dollars, US dollars. You can also go for the 3-pay if you want to break it down into 3 installments. So that's 3 months, and it's $597. And so if you choose the one-time payment, you are saving $500 from the overall tuition. So the 3-pay is a little bit more expensive, but it does give you those payment terms that might be more favorable for you. I don't know where the link is to actually sign up if you'd like to join the program now, but it should be somewhere around. There you go. Thank you, Ashley. I appreciate that.
And also pinned to the top of the YouTube comments too. So whichever's easiest for you. Yeah.
Yeah. As I mentioned, I didn't know where it was going to be. So I just put it on the right, why not?
You nailed it. It's on my screen anyway, it's pointing like directly to the link.
Awesome. Oh, perfect. There you go. So that worked out perfectly. It was planned. Let's just act like it was planned. So this is an offer that we're putting on for the next 7 days. So you have 7 days to give this consideration. We are, really excited if you'd like to join the program. And I'd like to give you a couple more points here that are important to know. What you're learning in this program is a framework. So it essentially allows you to launch one startup or several ideas. The other thing that's really important is that when you join the program, you have a 30-day refund guarantee, meaning that you're basically not assuming risk. No university does this. We just think it's the right thing to do. If we're not helping you see progress in your startup, and if you're not seeing the value, then we will give you your money back, no problem. And the best thing is that you get lifetime access to this, and that is insane. No one else is doing this. The reason why is because it is not profitable. I can tell you that right now. But the reality is that all these other programs that kind of have 8-week boot camps or 10-week boot camps, like building a startup company takes just longer than that. And so it's important for people to be able to take their time. And, great companies are usually built, within a couple of years. So with us, we're able to provide lifetime access because we've created a model where we actually can do that. And so it took a really long time to figure that out. But thankfully, all of our students really love it. So we've been really excited. And this is kind of what keeps me and Eddie going. I can tell you, teaching people how to build startups is a lot more difficult than building them yourself. Me and Eddie sometimes just say, why don't we just build all these startups for all these people instead? But, that's the mission that we're on. We're here to essentially create an amazing next generation of founders. So when you join this program, you'll essentially become what we call a founder of the future. This is a person who is able to identify and fine-tune opportunities very quickly, not wasting times on opportunities that aren't real opportunities, and able to seize the opportunities that are timely opportunities. These are founders who are able to have the hard skills that are required to build MVPs, cost effectively and without developers, and to be able to iterate and turn your users into customers without having to be like a sleazy salesman. So this is really about people who believe in working hard. They understand that basically nothing happens overnight. But if we consistently show up and we're putting in the work and we learn more specifically the hard skills to actually build, launch, and monetize the startup, we create ourselves and we become kind of self-reliant founders of the future. So these founders who are able to really do all of these things and who are essentially able to seek the freedom that they're looking for through these. So, no longer do we need to raise money from investors to get things started. I could talk about this all day long, but in 2000, easy to raise money with no product or revenue. Now it's 2020, guys, and if you don't have 3 to 6 months of revenue, investors will not take you seriously unless you were, one of the first 5 employees at SpaceX. By the way, I have friends who went through that as well. And then, I just wanted to thank everyone. I wanted to give a couple more minutes at the end of this presentation to answer questions. And I know that was a little long-winded, but I appreciate everyone showing up. If you are willing to or want to really build your startup and are ready, join us, because this is a movement that's not about to die. It is the future. And most people will anyway have to learn these skills as part of sort of, technology eating the world.
This is terrific. Thank you so much, Christian, for your wisdom and generosity. We have had a handful of, I think, really compelling questions coming through here. One that I thought of, in addition to, I think Anthony is the one who brought this up. But as you were chatting about the process and how it doesn't actually end up being productive for folks to build something before they've gone through this entire process of really drilling down into what the problem is, what the potential users would actually need, and whether people would engage with the MVP in the way that you think they would before you build it. Anthony says, okay, so is this actually just for non-technical folks, or is this product something that technical people could use too? And
there is so much controversy right now around this. This is like the best for technical people, because if you're a technical person,
it seems like
you've already had to learn so many like programming languages that learning no-code programming languages or visual programming languages is going to be a lot easier because you understand some basic concepts, and you're already a whiz with a computer. So it's like, this is really for everyone. And this is where we talk about, like, this is going to empower like a huge number of people. Like, this is how every single SMB will be built in the future. And I know this sounds like an exaggeration, but like, and now at this point, like I was basically, early on when this movement started, I was one of the only people rambling about it, and people just thought I was crazy. And now you have all these people that, raising, like $20 million with no-code platforms, people scaling up to millions, raising money, like doing all these crazy things.
I'm pretty sure Teachable falls into that category, if I'm not mistaken.
I'm not here to point
in some way, shape, or form.
But I mean, for me, it's just, honestly, this is the reason why I built this company. I failed the company as a non-technical founder. One of the companies that I built had failed, and having to go through the hardship of like that failure when I didn't have to go through it, made me realize that there's just a like, honestly, for people who are starting out and for the entire next generation of founders, like right now is like the best time. Like, I wish that my first startup was in 2020. Right now, like, also the other thing that I'd like to mention is like the pandemic has changed customer behavior dramatically, and all these large companies are trying to adapt. And
you got to relearn
each one of those things. There are cracks. There are opportunities everywhere right now. We've changed the way that we eat. We've changed the way that we learn. We've changed the way that we, all these things. And it's just like I'm a kid in a candy store right now. And sometimes it's like, I wish I had more time to build more startups on the side. Right now we're focused on We Are No Code because our mission is to empower people. We'll continue to build awesome companies. We also, have just experience in a lot of different fields. I have experience in, from live streaming to marketing to, running funnels to SEO to building things with no code to, like, one thing people don't realize with entrepreneurship is that it's a career, right? You don't jump into like being a doctor and operate on someone, right? You essentially, it takes practice, it takes a bit of upskilling. And the great thing with all of these tools and these methodologies is that they can easily be broken down. Like for me, the biggest frustration in tech was seeing that like people use so much tech jargon that it makes people who are non-technical believe I'll never be able to do this.
That they can't access it. Yeah. Yeah.
And that is like becoming a huge myth. And so
it's an accessibility tension,
exactly.
Yeah. Which is something that, in addition to the shifting way that startups are being built, we're also collectively as a society kind of reckoning with accessibility in different ways now. And I think that includes the vocabulary that we use as much as it does, I mean, to be literal about it, the language that we use, coding language versus not coding language, right?
Exactly.
So
and just so basically, the other thing I'd like to mention is that if you we also have a YouTube channel. We've started really pumping out some great content for free there. So anyone who wants to follow, we are NoCode. Check it out. For those of you who want to start with this journey, and my biggest advice as entrepreneurship is just start and accept the fact that you're just not going to be good. It's like, that's something that as humans, we have a hard time with, right? We always need to know. We need to, and it's like, it's fine. Like start as a beginner, start today, because it's going to make and also you don't want to learn how to be a good entrepreneur when you fall on that golden idea, because you want to be able to build it and quickly launch it. And so one of the big things that we say is like learning the skills, the hard skills that it takes to actually build, launch, and monetize a company. You should learn those before that perfect opportunity comes up. But also we have plenty of people who are just like so frustrated working with developers, have spent already like 30, 50K, are just like, you know what? Every time I go back to them, they ask for another $5,000. Like, I just can't do this. And that's the reality. It's like, as technical people, as non-technical people, we need to understand that like, we don't need to become programmers. We don't need to become the best. We just need to learn the basics, and we need to be able to get things off the ground. And that's where NoCode is so perfectly placed. And at the moment, you can scale this now to hundreds of thousands of people. And regardless of whether, go ahead.
I'm curious about that, and I know we had a couple questions come in too.
Yeah.
Yes, scalabilities. Can you talk a little bit about that? I think Chang was asking, like how do we host X number of users, or what's the progression look like for scalability?
Yeah. Great question. This is a question that always comes back. We have like a pretty much 5-10 questions that always come back. So that one essentially is that no-code tools back in the day, it was you couldn't scale that well with them, which meant that you couldn't. However, in the past 3 years, that has dramatically changed. I think one of the questions was also around hosting. So hosting happens within these no-code platforms, usually all hosted on AWS in the back end. Through these interfaces directly. So you're building in an interface. You don't even have to think of where stuff's being stored. Like it's just being stored. And so that's where you're leveraging essentially the platforms themselves. And you're paying for a subscription for the no-code platform. And you also, and of course, as you get more and more users, you're paying more for server costs through the platform. But the idea is that you used to only be able to do like a couple hundred, couple thousand people. Now we have like people building platforms that host like several 100,000, monthly active users. And so that really has changed. It's like, it means that you can't, you can literally go from just idea to like millions of dollars in revenue without having to code. And here's the other thing about scalability that a lot of people don't understand. Regardless of whether it's built with or without code, you're going to have to essentially, as you scale, you're going to have to rebuild entire parts of it. So, like when you build something fully with code, you either have to build it completely from scratch again, or you would at minimum have to rebuild the entire infrastructure behind it when you're scaling to like millions of people. So this essentially, it's like, it's kind of like, don't worry, it's like, oh, what happens when I reach, 5 million monthly active users? Like, don't worry about that moment. That's a great problem to have. Worry about all the problems that could happen till then, because and so that's where people jump steps, and then it bites them in the butt, and so it ends up like,
you can host the early adopters, right? Those really precious early users, and cultivate those relationships. through the first couple phases of the growth of your startup. And then the next set of questions you have to worry about would actually be a next set of questions, regardless of how you built the first version. Right?
Exactly. You can literally today build Airbnb right now, and you can scale it to like, let's say, a couple $1 million in revenue. And then you'll be able to start thinking, okay, how can I scale it to like worldwide? How can I, deliver this to millions of people? So that becomes a whole different dynamic. But when it comes to the early stage of startups, like this is, no-code tools are taking over. And there are so many types of no-code tools. Now there are even no-code tools being built for developers. So I also do interviews that...
like Anthony's question.
A lot of the CEOs. So there are tools like that. UI Flow is one that just graduated from Y Combinator. So they built a powerful tool for that. And there are, some tools. There are so many tools. That's another thing. Like we've curated the platforms we teach because we've learned so many no-code tools, and we're not going to be teaching tools that are going to disappear in a year. We're not going to teach tools who don't have functionalities. Like we're teaching like a curated list of the most powerful platforms, and which one you need to use for your startup. That's where we assist on the hands-on, because there's going to be a different approach to the first product than there might be to the second product.
Right.
And what we want to do is take action on the things that are priorities right now. Like, don't build the entire spaceship. You need to build a proof of concept. Then you need to go out and monetize, make money from it. And then you want to make that better and better. And that's sort of, iterative improvements.
Well, and you've answered a bit of Juana's question as well about the, which platforms and tools are we teaching, which I think, is you listed on a slide earlier, back. So
we teach Webflow, we teach Bubble, we teach MemberStack, we teach Airtable, we teach Zapier. And we're also constantly adding to our curriculum. So you have lifetime access. So we add modules, entire modules. Right now, we are going to add a module towards the end of this year. That's going to be Adalo, which is now it's proven itself. But it's like, we have to do such heavy vetting. And honestly, like a lot of people's questions, usually it's like they have to potentially have like, and that's the interesting thing, right? It's like, we're not just saying like everything has to always be built with no code. No, sometimes you're going to want to build something with code. Sure. Also, there are a couple of caveats. Like you can't yet build blockchain infrastructure with no code. That being said, if you're launching something that's a blockchain company, this is still the best way to go out there and test the market, right? You cannot build virtual reality worlds, but you can, build the entire demand behind that business leveraging no code. The other thing people don't understand is like these skills are also the future of the workforce. Like we're basically moving from a generation of people who used to execute tasks, really good at executing tasks, and computers are just better than this. So AI and automation is taking over. And, essentially we are, as humans are, I like to think of it like we have been talking about this for 10 years, right? Like automation is going to take over the world. Yes, it is slowly, but guess what? You have all these opportunities to leverage all these tools and become the masters of the tools. So you don't no longer have to do the tasks. It's like as humans, we basically are going to have to learn how to leverage these tools so that we can get back to the more creative things
and build the different skill sets.
So upskilling, like I kind of see no-code platforms and tools kind of like, back in the day when Excel and PowerPoint first came out, it was like awesome if you put them on your curriculum and it's like, I know how to do these things. Like, trust me, if you're looking for a job at a tech firm, nothing more impressive than showing someone what you built over the weekend in no code. It's like, oh, well, you're in, we use no code for marketing. We like build our own landing pages. We create partnership pages. So there's other areas of every business where these platforms are really effective. We're also considering down the line releasing a automations program. So there's just so much happening here. We just happen to like be kind of nerding out on this stuff early on. And more importantly, like the problem that's happening in the world right now, either people are nerding out on the tech side or they're overthinking on the methodology side. And we just that's why we created this whole thing. It's like, hey, the education system is teaching people how to like create like complex valuation models, how to fundraise, how to create a pitch deck, how to create a business plan. Like those things are not actually useful in building an early stage of a company right now. So we really want to empower people with these hard skills that they can, use in every other area of their life as well. We even see people who join our program, they have an idea, they realize after building and testing with the market that they're not passionate about it, or they choose to either try something different. We've also seen people like, great, I'm just going to build products for other people. Now I just created my own agency. So it's like insane. Like,
it helps you clarify so many things along the way about what your interest is in the process, how you want to be spending your time. That's really, really great to hear. So for our audience, I know we're a bit over time. I would love for you to join me in thanking Christian and the We Are No Code team for joining us today and being so generous with time and wisdom and answering all of the questions, because there's, quite frankly, so much here. And Christian, you said it already, but we could do any number of live events or sections of the curriculum that you all have developed. So definitely check out the link for the course, which, as Christian mentioned, is not just a standard curriculum where you're absorbing passive content. It is hands-on community engagement. You're connected with a network of folks. You are getting coaching, which, group work and group feedback, which Christian, we were chatting about this. My background, I used to work at TED and did a lot in the speaker coaching space. And there is nothing more valuable than, as you're going through the process, getting direct feedback from somebody who may be an audience member and hearing other people, like learning from what other people are learning in their own process. So the fact that that's built into your course, I think is really great. So thank you all.
Anyone who also watched for an hour and 11 minutes, I salute you and I appreciate your presence here right now. If you'd like to join, we would love to have you. If not, also totally fine. Go check out our website, wearenocode.com. Subscribe to my YouTube channel that I just started. And make sure that if you cross other people who are going through, or they have ideas and are not taking action, or they've been trying to build this thing forever and they're not really getting anywhere, like, information is power. So just let them know that this is something that's happening and that there are options for them, because let's call it the consequences of having people give up on their dreams are dramatic. Like that's what happens when people try to build something and it doesn't work out. They lose confidence and it can create all other types of issues. And that was one of the big things that I went out to solve with Eddie. And so if you'd like to join us, we'd love to have you.
All right. Thank you all so much for joining us. Kristen, thank you. Thank you to the team at NoCode, or We Are NoCode, and like and subscribe the YouTube channel here as well if you want to be notified when we have other great experts who join us to share what they know and help you grow in the areas that you're hoping to develop. Have a great rest of your day, evening, wherever you are in the world. Thanks for joining us. And thank you, Kristen. Have a good one.
Absolutely. Take care, everybody. See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.